It's an icon of Australian roads, a go-to daily driver, and for a lot of people, it will be their first car. This is of course the new version of the Suzuki Swift, and this time around it wears a hybrid badge. Now, if you've been following the story of this car, you'll know that it's not quite a hybrid in the same way as a Toyota hybrid, for example. So what we're here to find out is, how does it work? Does it actually save you any fuel? And is it much better than the previous version of this car? Well, we've been living with this one for 3 months and a few thousand Ks to find out.
Okay, first up, let's talk pricing. The car we've been driving around for a while is a current top spec GLX hybrid. At a smidge under 30k, it lands at exactly the same price as a base MG3 Excite hybrid, while an absolute base model Toyota Yaris is even more expensive. So in isolation, the Swift is pretty good value. You can get this top spec one with rare features for the segment, like heated front seats, for the same price as its base rivals, but there is a catch or two. Those two main rivals are real hybrids with electric motors which actually drive the wheels, while our Swift is just a mild hybrid with a big starter motor thing and a tiny battery, so it's not quite as ambitious, which is a bit of a shame. To make up for this significant difference, Suzuki throws in a lot of standard equipment. And that includes things like a new 9-inch multimedia touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and wired Android Auto connectivity, a wireless phone charger, new LED headlights, two-tone 16-inch alloy wheels, a leather-bound multifunction steering wheel, and sporty cloth seats with the aforementioned heating feature. However, there are a few things missing. This GLX grade, for example, used to be turbocharged, and now it's not. And the entire Swift range is missing a digital instrument cluster, which some of its rivals now get. Of course, there's also a few ANCAP stars missing too, but we'll talk more on that later.
Now, as always, this is instantly identifiable as a Suzuki Swift. You've got that curvy windscreen, you've got that descending roofline, that kind of youthful overall flair. But if I'm being honest with you, I reckon this time around, this car is less resolved than the one that came before it. It almost looks like these headlights belong from a different car. And yes, it's got that contemporary grille, but this weird kind of UFO shape in the bonnet is also a bit weird. But I do think it's quite a nice overall looking car. It's sort of boxy around the edges, which is a bit tougher this time around, and the gloss black highlights do elevate this GLX version as well. When it comes to design, the interior is a little bit haphazard. There's just a lot of textures and materials going on in here. There's like this white lower section, then there's some gloss black, and then there's some silver. It's quite a landscape of colors. And then there's this multimedia screen. Now, this is something that the Swift has needed for a long time, a bit of a tech overhaul. But the thing with this screen is, yes, it's faster. Yes, it looks better. Yes, it supports Apple CarPlay in quite a nice way. But it's got this massive bezel on it, almost as though it was meant for a bigger screen, and then it's got a smaller one. I don't really know what's going on with it. And on top of that, it doesn't have any hard sort of toggles for volume or shortcut buttons or anything like that. It's just a touch panel across the bottom. Thankfully, all of your climate functions are controlled via an awesome little panel here. You've got toggles for fan speed, temperature, you've got an automatic, you've got cutoffs, you've got shortcuts for all your buttons. That's a really nice thing to see in cars when almost everything is in touchscreens these days. In terms of space and practicality, look, this is a small car, but I think Suzuki's done quite a good job of packaging it for bigger people. So I'm 182 centimeters tall, but I've got so much headroom in here. I've got plenty of width, I suppose, because there's not much in the way to get in the way of my elbows and things in here. It is still a narrow car. And I think while my seat is quite a fair bit forward, there's no hard plastics for my knees to jut up against, which can't be said for every small car. On the topic of these seats, they're really nice. They're made of this sort of soft foam material. They don't look particularly good at a distance. They just look like cheap car seats, but they're really nicely bolstered, which goes a long way to keeping you comfortable when you're driving this car in the corners and stuff like that. And it's got quite a full-featured steering wheel as well. It's like a cutesy sort of design with this plastic fill in it, but it's also got plenty of buttons to control your central cluster in here, your phone settings, and even things like the adaptive cruise control. And there are paddles on this one for the manual setting on the CVT automatic too. So not all small cars have that either. Okay, and a final note in here, the dash cluster. It's quite interesting because it's all analog dials. It doesn't have like a massive digital segment like there is in a lot of other cars. And that's kind of interesting because it makes the car feel a little bit older, but it also just works, and I appreciate that. Okay, now this brings us to cabin storage. this has been one of the things that's been a constant bugbear in my 3 months with this car. There's just not enough room for stuff in here. So you've got some tiny little pockets in the doors and a dedicated bottle holder as well. It only just holds this large CarsGuide bottle. But these two up here in the front, they're just not quite big enough. Like that bottle barely fits in there. Looks like it's going to tip over. And you've got a wireless charging bay up the front here, which makes it kind of useless for anything else. But if you've got two bottles, you can't even access it. Like, how am I meant to get around there? And the same thing goes for the cables. Like, you've got USB ports galore down here. You've got two in here, and you've got another one here, but only one of them is a data port, and it just means that there's going to be cables all over this cabin. There's no way to manage it like you might have in another car that's got like a raised console here instead. So in that way, it is kind of an old school sort of design. Here in the back seat, it's a very similar story to the front seat in that I have quite a lot of room in here for someone my size. That's behind my own driving position. And as you can see, I've got room for my knees, I've got room for my head. It's actually not too bad. And the seat trim, again, it's nice and spongy. Looks basic, but it's pretty comfortable in here. Then we get to the tough stuff. So the door trims, they even stripped out the tiny little bit of fabric for your elbow. I just think that's such a cheap move. And then there's no storage in here at all. Like, there's no storage on the backs of the seats. There's a tiny bottle holder on the back of the front kind of console here that only fits our smallest bottle, and there's a tiny bottle holder in each of the doors, but there's no pocket in there. There's no drop down armrest, there's no ski port, there's nothing like that. It is very basic back here. So can you fit two adults? Technically yes, and that's impressive on its own, but does it do anything else? There's not even any air vents or USB ports back here, so no.
The boot measures in at 265 litres, which is slightly bigger than the previous Swift and about right for this segment. We've done a few weekend trips with this car and it's fine for a couple, but perhaps less so for a family. Imagine trying to have to fit a pram in here, as well as all your other things. Worth thinking about if you're cross-shopping this with a small SUV. A repair kit is standard, but you can pay extra for a spare wheel.
Okay, so under here, there's no big electric motor housed in a hybrid transmission like you might get in a Toyota Yaris or the new hybrid MG3, and that's what gives those cars that nice smooth portion of electrified driving. Instead, the Swift gets what's called a hybrid starter generator thing, and that can tip a little bit of extra power into this tiny little 3-cylinder engine, and it does help the engine stay off for a longer period of time as well, and that all helps just a little bit with that fuel efficiency.
See the power figures on your screen now. Like the previous Swift, this one drives the front wheels via a continuously variable automatic transmission. And the thing about this whole system is it's still just not as ambitious as its rivals, which use those real hybrid systems, and it's not even that much more affordable.
Okay, so I guess in that sense it's not a real hybrid, but if it's just as fuel efficient, does that even matter? Well, in my 3 months with the car, I've driven it pretty far, a few thousand Ks, and over that time it's consumed an average of 4.8 litres to 100 kilometres. And the thing is, even though it doesn't have that hard electric motor that drives that front axle, it's more fuel efficient than the new MG3.
Now, this car is beaten by the Yaris, which is one of the most fuel-efficient cars I've ever driven, but only by a litre to 100 Ks, which begs the question if it's worth splashing more for the Toyota, given the extra you have to pay up front. The Swift, however, does have two annoying downsides. Firstly, the new engine requires 95 unleaded, which eats into your cost benefit from picking the hybrid. And secondly, it's only got a 37-litre fuel tank, so even though it's pretty efficient, you'll have to fill up every 650 Ks or so, which is a little bit annoying.
Okay, so what's this new Swift been like to drive? And after 3 months, are we sick of it or do we still really like it? Well, I think the first thing that's really important about this car is Suzuki hasn't lost sight of making a car actually really nice to drive. Yes, it's a really simple car, and yes, it's not super exciting to drive, it's not super powerful, but it just has like a really nice organic steering tune, which makes you feel really connected to the road. And even though it's not massively powerful when you put your foot down on the accelerator to power out of those corners, it's got just enough poke to make it just enough fun. Like, it puts a smile on your face when you're driving it on a nice curvy back road. And that's increasingly rare in this segment. Like, there's a lot of kind of dreary engines. There's a lot of like electrified systems that don't make the car too exciting, but they are nice and smooth. But this car just remembers to kind of split the difference and make a fun car to drive, which is also efficient. And again, that's quite rare. And it's just a pleasure to drive a little car like this day to day. Now, how it compares to the previous Swift, it's not really a revolutionary change. A lot of it feels the same, but there is a noticeable sort of jump in refinement this time around. It's a little bit quieter. The suspension is like a little bit better at handling bumps. It doesn't feel as cheap and cheerful as it did before. And those little incremental upgrades, I think they're all really important, because if you're coming out of an old Swift into this one, you will feel like you've gotten a meaningful upgrade. Now, all these elements that add up to make this car nice to drive really make a difference when you're on the open road. I took this car on a 1,000-kilometer road trip up the coast of New South Wales, and the funny thing was, I was expecting it to be much worse. Like, I was expecting to feel a bit rattled about over a longer distance drive. And the thing was, I would come out of the car every single time, couple of hours behind the wheel, feeling pretty refreshed. And I think that's down to the nice soft seating, the upgrades in refinement, but also things like the adaptive cruise control. It's just nice and simple, and it just works and doesn't constantly annoy you. And I think that's good too. It is a little bit of a shame that it does miss out on that smooth driving characteristic that comes with a lot of its hybrid rivals and their electrified transmissions. Instead, in the Swift, you do get this gruff little 3-cylinder engine. It's quite a fun sort of sound that it makes, but a bit of the fun is sucked away from it by the dreary, continuously variable automatic transmission. It does make the engine feel a bit thrashy, a bit overburdened as you kind of power out of corners. And that's just a little bit of a shame. It would be nice to see this generation of Swift get its own sport version, because I think that'll be a really excellent car. Now, when it comes to driving it around town, you know, the thing that this car was really built for, it's good at that too. It's got good visibility, it's got nice tight dimensions, which makes it really easy to park. And that suspension upgrade, it makes it so it's not as jarring when you start to see a few bumps on those crappy suburban streets. Instead, it's just comfortable and competent, really everything that it should be. And this is the thing, Suzuki could have done a lot more to make this car better this time around. But I think the important thing is, it just does everything that it sets out to do quite well. Okay, so safety equipment. Well, this is a bit of an awkward topic for this car, because it did receive a 1-star ANCAP safety rating.
This is because the Swift sold in Australia has some major changes compared to the 3-star Euro ANCAP car, which is sold overseas. ANCAP slammed the Swift specifically for having comparatively poor physical crash performance to its latest and more rigorous standards, and it's also missing some active safety equipment like driver attention alert and rear seat occupant reminders.
However, and this goes a long way to making this car nicer to drive on the long term, it doesn't have any really annoying safety systems like a lot of its rivals have. It's not constantly beeping at you, it's not interfering with the drive experience, it doesn't have like a violent lane keep assist. So I think it really gets a few points from me just for being a nice car to drive and with a safety system that's not straight up annoying. Okay, when it comes to ownership, here's the thing. The warranty wars, they're really back on. MG, for example, has moved to a 10-year warranty, and there are a lot more brands moving into that 7-year bracket as well, but Suzuki stays the course with its usual 5-year and unlimited kilometer warranty. The service schedule sticks to a usual 12-month and 15,000 K interval. And service pricing is not as cheap as Toyota, but it's not bad.
At the time we put this review together, the first 5 years of servicing averaged out to a little under $400 a year. Now, to put that in perspective, it's not as affordable as a Toyota Yaris to service, for example, but it is more affordable than the Kia Picanto.
Okay, so after 3 months and a few thousand Ks, can we recommend this new hybrid Suzuki Swift? I think the answer is a resounding yes. While it doesn't quite feel as ambitious as a lot of its rivals, and it does feel more like a deep facelift rather than a whole new generation car, it compensates for that well with a high level of standard equipment, and it's mercifully simple and easy to use every single day. On top of that, it has proven to be fuel efficient in a wide range of driving scenarios. So while it's not a real hybrid, I think it does a pretty good job of not overthinking the problem. So what do you think? Has Suzuki done enough to maintain interest in this iconic small hatch? Or would you rather drive a Toyota Yaris or an MG3? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And if you want to check out all the little details in our 3 chapters for this car's long-term test, make sure you do that over at carsguide.com.au.